time for the business news next on the program, and I'm joined by Stephen Carroll. Good morning, Stephen.
Hi, Delano.
You've been looking at the business reaction to Mark Zuckerberg's comments.
That's right. Well, they came just before the close of Wall Street, and his admitting that they had made mistakes saw a slight uptick in the company's share price. It finished up around 0.75% in trading on Wednesday. For the week, though, share price down over 8%, wiping tens of billions of dollars off the company's value. Now, if you look at what market experts are saying about Facebook, they do recognise the damage, but fundamentally, most of them believe the share price will still climb in the future.
Now, there's a campaign online for people to hashtag delete their Facebook accounts.
It's attracted names including Brian Acton, who's one of the people who founded WhatsApp in 2014, which he then sold to Facebook.
Which I thought was very weird, actually.
He is now running a company that rivals WhatsApp, though,
okay.
so it perhaps there's his own interest involved there. But the hashtag delete Facebook has been tweeted tens of thousands of times over the past couple of days. If you do decide to do it, it's quite easy to do on the site. It takes a couple of days, but it will delete your profile and you can download the data that you had saved online with Facebook. But while your profile will disappear, photos that you're tagged in that other people have posted will remain there, as will your posts on other people's pages. So you won't disappear entirely from the site. There may also be an issue in that if you're using Facebook to log into other apps like Spotify, you're going to have to create new logins with those accounts as well.
Now, is this likely to make a big difference to Facebook's numbers?
It's hard to tell at this stage. Previous delete campaigns haven't had massive effects on other companies. Facebook has more than 2 billion users worldwide. It also, of course, has a whole suite of other apps as well, which are very commonly used too. Facebook also owns WhatsApp, as we were saying, 1.5 billion users for WhatsApp. Messenger has 1.3 billion users, and Instagram has some 800 million. Quitting all of those would be a pretty big change for most users. Part of the issue that people have about leaving Facebook is that, of course, brings in several different functions. You have the messaging, you have photo sharing, and you also have the event planning aspect of it. The other issue is that because the numbers for other social networks are much smaller, for example, Snapchat has 187 million daily users. The figures we had for Facebook were monthly users. Twitter, 330 million. On the messaging front, China's WeChat has 1 billion users, but there are concerns over surveillance on that network as well. And Japan's Line has around 200 million. So if you do go to other apps, you may find some of the people you used to connect with on Facebook aren't on those.
And also Snapchat is for a different generation.
That's an arguable case.
Now we're staying in the United States next, where the country is expected to announce new trade measures against China.
The sanctions are expected to include restrictions on investment by Chinese companies and also tariffs on imported goods worth as much as $60 billion. This comes after a 7-month investigation by the US government into tactics used by Chinese companies in their deals with their American counterparts. They include demanding US companies hand over trade secrets in exchange for access to the Chinese market. Now, business groups do want something done about this issue, but they fear such sanctions may spark a trade war. Well, these new measures would come on top of the planned tariffs on imported steel and aluminium. That's a move that's worrying French steel workers, as Catherine Viette now reports.
This is one of the last steelworks operating in France. Here, scrap metal is melted down and turned into steel bars for export. Just 2% of France's total steel exports are destined for the U.S. But now that President Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on steel imports, there are fears the American market may soon be off limits. If Washington makes it more expensive for steel exporters, top producing countries like Brazil, Turkey, and China could seek other markets, possibly flooding the EU with discounted steel.
What will not end up being sold in the US will probably be sold in Europe and France. There will be overcapacity, it will be very competitive, and if the commercial battle gets very tough, unfortunately, it may affect the workforce of some steel producers.
Strict EU regulations could make things harder for French steel producers as they rush to face Chinese competition. Some employees have already agreed to pay cuts. Now these workers say they're worried about their jobs.
We see it with factories closing everywhere. In the UK, they're closing too, and it's not too far away.
There are 234 employees at this plant and thousands of others at risk across France.
Well, trade tariffs are a big worry for the markets. They're also digesting the latest comments in the Federal Reserve today in trading. Pretty cautious start here in Europe. Banks leading the falls. You can see London, Paris and Frankfurt all firmly in the red there. A little bit more of a mixed picture on the Asian markets. Gains earlier in the session for the Nikkei in Tokyo and for the Kospi in Seoul, but Shanghai and Hong Kong in the red. Delano.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen Carroll, there with the day's business news.